calendula, achillea, everything, like a chocolate box of flowers. Each one is just a slightly different shade, and some of them are singles, and some of them are more ruffled, and some of them are so intense you can hardly even see inside.
Another diminutive little darling in fuchsia
Magellanica?
whatever.
It's got that, it's like a dirty white, very appropriate for this programme.
Come here. Come to the quarter screen. Na 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 na.
Hello, welcome to the 4th episode of Talking Dirty, Get Gardening's podcast, especially for plant lovers. Alan, I suppose, as is usually the way, I should let you introduce me with all of my middle names.
Well, hello, hello, and welcome to everybody. This is Thordis. Maria. Marie. This is Thordis Marie Sophia Friedrichsen.
And this is Alan Edward Herbert Gray. Herbert, the happy, handsome horticulturalist, as we've come to call him. Every week we're being joined by a mystery guest. As is the norm, we like to keep them secret at the beginning of the podcast, then do a big reveal. So, drum roll. Who's behind the mystery window?
Hello.
Hey! Well lit, devilishly handsome and very impish.
Thank you very
Ben,
much.
would you like to introduce yourself à la and avec your middle name?
I'm Ben James Potterton.
I was expecting something a bit more ostentatious.
No, it's very disappointing. I always, as you know, my son has a far more exciting name, but I just got a James in the middle. I quite like a Herbert, though. Who doesn't like a Herbert?
Why did he pick that?
Herbert's lovely. Now, as you know, my son's got Wasp as his middle name.
What? But not remotely waspish at all.
Well, he's got time. I think when he gets to teenage, we'll see.
Now, every time we catch up with one of our friends, we obviously know a lot about you, but people sort of find this from all over the place. They may have listened to you a lot on the radio, because we've all done a radio show together for lots of years. But for people who don't know you at all, tell us a bit about you.
Oh, I like the dog. Well, I'm a sort of failed horticulturalist. I like plants, but I'm not very keen on gardening. So I think the beauty of plants and the structure of plants and the wealth of plants fascinate me. But I say gardening I find a bit dirty, and I can't ruin your hands, and I can't be doing with that. But also I like wildlife. So when I was at college, I had that choice of wildlife or plants, and I wasn't sure what to do really. And sadly, they tried to push me down the farming route, which wasn't for me. So I chose horticulture. And I'm very lucky in the fact that I'm able to twin both. So I do lots of sort of conservation projects, and zoology is a real interest of mine, and putting animals back into the wild. But equally, I like nature conservation, local wildlife. I like wildflowers and bird spotting, and I'm an all-rounder really.
And I'm sure you'll agree with me, Alan, that going to see Ben is a little bit like visiting Dr. Dolittle.
Yes, if you don't get suddenly accosted by, I don't know what they're called, those little monkey things that live in boxes and trees and things, you're likely to get walked hand in hand with hand in wing with a crane or something. So it's always a surprise. I have to say, it's always a surprise, and sometimes more than a little alarming.
Yeah,
I think
you live in a place where there are always kind of crazy animal noises waking you up at the crack of dawn.
I don't notice it. I was going to do an impression then, but I didn't go well. I don't notice it. It's very strange where you live. I mean, it's like even like chickens. I do like chickens, and I've got a lot of chickens and lots of cockerels, but I don't hear the background noise. And if there's a problem though, I'm up straight away. But I can miss it. And we have various people stay from time to time, and there's like the noise of the cockerels in the morning is horrific, and I'm like, what noise? do we have cockerels? The other night, recently this week, I have had sheep getting into my garden, and they haven't been bleating, but I've heard the rustle of the grass, and I thought Alan was trying to creep in, and I've been out there like a shot. But yeah, the sheep. So it's not bleating, it's rustling like I was listening to this week.
And you are such a plant lover. I mean, you said you're not necessarily one for the gardening, but you love the plants. You really, really love unusual plants, and you mentioned wildflowers. You are regularly known to pull over the car so you can check out something that looks interesting in the verge.
Why not? Why not? I mean, there's some fantastic, and I think when I was younger, I used to poo-poo everything. Everything was, wildflowers were just weeds. But when you look at them, and then your regional variations and different color variations, there's some super things. But like most of our garden plants we grow, the species are a weed somewhere in the world, and typically we don't appreciate our own weeds. So we can be waxing lyrical about some plant that grows on a rough track in China, and yet if it grows in a rough track in Norwich, we don't even bother about it. So no, I appreciate things with age. But I'm like Alan. Alan's a plantaholic, and it's interesting how some of our colleagues would like a nice lawn or like a nice, and Alan's an all-rounder, but he's a plant lover, and I'm a plant lover, and I think, I could probably do without the grass. I could probably do that, but a fascinating range of plants. Oh, can't beat it, can you?
Well, Alan, I mean, talking of being a plantaholic, I don't know how much you can tell us about what you've been doing with your morning, but I know it's probably been quite exciting for someone who likes unusual plants.
Well, yes, it has, because a great friend of mine, I'm not going to say who it is or where she is, but a great friend of mine has got to the age where she's downsizing. But she's not moving house, but she's downsizing her garden. And she has a garden, a jewel box of a garden. And she has certain people that she's selected that she wants to give certain plants to, because she knows that they'll have a good home and they'll carry on long after she goes, because she doesn't know what's going to happen to her garden, obviously. And so this morning I've been galanthus hunting. So I've been digging up dormant snowdrops and making sure that each one is labeled, and I brought them back. I haven't planted them yet because I'm busy doing something else at the moment, but you can ask me in a minute what that is. No, it's really rather nice. And it's one of those things that I said to her, will you please let me pay you for these things? And she said, no, but you can give a donation to my favorite charity that I have opened my garden for in the past. And so I did that. And it was a generous donation. I hope she thinks so. I mean, well, you know what snowdrops cost. They're not the cheapest things that you can buy today. And so, so we did 2 or 3 things today. I mean, I helped her, she helped me, and together we helped the charity. And I think that's rather nice. It makes the world go round. By the way, the National Garden Scheme tour is fully booked on Thursday. Hey. Just to let you know, this has nothing to do with anybody else. I'm just telling you.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, also raising really important money for charity. If you haven't been to a National Garden Scheme garden and you're in the UK watching this, you must look up ngs.org.uk, because they're just such treasures. Anytime you get to go and visit a garden which is loved and is planted with passion is a real treat, and it's so inspiring. So yeah, go look.
It is, and I think one thing you can't say enough. The one thing you can't say enough is please go on the NGS website, ngs.org.uk, because I've had people ringing up to book it here. Not just 1, not just 10, not just 20. Do you know what I mean? Gets a little annoying.
Oh, yes. Alan, you said that you've been doing lots of things, other things, not just galanthus hunting. What else has been on your to-do list this morning?
Well, I've been judging gardens today, believe it or not, as well, because...
Something you never. Oh, yikes! Don't come here, will you?
Well, no. I mean, people have been working very well because of the lockdown. People have been working really, really hard in their gardens, and it was an invitation for some of the people in Swaffham to actually send in photographs of their garden, so their efforts could be judged. Now, I mean, the sad thing is that there can only be one winner in all this, and it's me. The sad thing is there can only be one winner in any category. And I mean, I don't mind judging, because a certain amount of your personality has to come into it, because it's personal taste, a lot of it. But the one little thing that I was slightly sad about was there were 3 children's gardens, but only one could win. And so I've got to decide who's going to be the winner. It's a tough life.
What have you been up to, Ben, dare I ask? Because you've probably been up since 3 o'clock looking after all kinds of livestock.
I have. I was looking at my picture thinking, I used to pull my face back a little bit, but it's not too bad. No, it hasn't been too bad a day. I've been catching up with various stuff. Tomorrow I have a very exciting day there. So my colleagues have I've sent them off down the river to Geldeston to help with a lady who's got a beautiful wildflower meadow. And we're assisting her with maintaining that meadow and trying to bring more biodiversity into it. So I've sent 2 colleagues down to help, and we're just hay cutting today. We're moving some of the seed around, and I knew I should have gone with them, but I knew I'd never come back. So I decided to be more constructive. Mrs. Potterton and Rowan are out somewhere, been doing some work, moving some eryngiums. I've sort of flitted about. But tomorrow I'm going to the Cotswold Wildlife Park in Oxford, which is a beautiful garden. I mean, it's one of my favourite gardens of a zoo garden. Very well thought of garden, nice perennial borders, nice trees. They've gone to the effort that they don't need to, really. They've got heated water for tropical water lilies outside, which is lovely to see. I mean, I'm sure most of the visitors it's lost on. But it's a beautiful garden, and I'm hoping, if I have time, I'm going to pop in at Avondale Nurseries in Coventry, which is not on the route to Oxford particularly. It's about an hour and a bit out of my way, but I want a few things, and I'm going in that rough direction. So I'm hoping for a very busy day tomorrow. And I'm going to pick up a new male donkey, which is very exciting, a miniature donkey. So I'm hoping to come back with lots of plants and a donkey.
I feel like we should catch up with you to find out what plants you managed to pick up on your adventures. And perhaps that might give us, or at least me, a spot of what I've been calling floral FOMO, but between episode 3 of Talking Dirty and episode 4, Alan has renamed it, and I feel a bit stupid for not calling it FLOMO myself. So, Ben, you're new to this feature of FLOMO, the fear of missing out on a fabulous plant. I'm going to go first because I always pick the most boring thing because I'm the newest gardener. I wrote it down so I didn't forget what it was. I went to the garden at King's College, Cambridge yesterday and had such a wonderful tour in the rain with their head gardener, Steve Coghill, who knows so much and hopefully can join us on this podcast at some point. But everywhere I went, I kept seeing Campsis chinensis, the Chinese trumpet vine, in various shades of oranges and yellows and lovely kind of ambers, and you can see why I love it. And it really looks like it should be tender, but he assured me it shouldn't be. So I need some Campsis chinensis in my life desperately.
And you won't regret having it. But the only thing is, I think I have to warn you that it can be a little bit of a rampant chap.
It did look rampant.
It only really flowers on the ends of its shoots. So it just keeps going and going and going. But the funny thing is that you mentioned this Campsis, and a few years ago, I mean, 20 or 30 years ago, the strange thing was lots of people were growing it in England, but not many of them got it to flower successfully. And that is tantamount because, well, it's caused by global warming. That's why it flowers so well today, because you only had to cross the channel and go into northern France, and which is slightly warmer, or in those days was warmer than England, and it was flowering abundantly. Today it's flowering abundantly here, and we've got it out in the garden here. And if it's the one I think you may have seen, was this in the Cambridge College?
Yes.
There's a huge orange specimen there. Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that, and it made me go and get that plant, because that plant is quite an unusual one. It's not one of the Madame Galen or you know, the yellow or the bright red or anything. It's a larger flowered, it's more floriferous, and it's absolutely wonderful.
It's probably a bit too big for my garden, but that's not going to stop me.
I can probably see mine from here.
Oh.
You can?
I think they've just started flowering.
Yeah.
But I looked at it in the winter and thought, oh, it looked very dead. The twigs they don't give you much enthusiasm in the winter. You look at it and think, oh, I've lost it. And then it's beautiful. It's going over the side of a building, and it's been, I'm very lucky because it's quite a neat one, and it's sort of going on the gable. And my wife keeps telling me we should give it a trim, but I'm never.
But you can give it a trim, Ben, because I went to a garden of Brian Ellis and David the other day, and they've got one growing on the back of their house. And they trim it quite regularly, because if not, it goes through the window and out the other side of the house. So they
really? Oh, well.
So you can.
I'll consider giving it a trim.
As our guest, Ben, what's your FLOMO?
Well, I've had it before, Alan, I will tell you that. And there's an eryngium, shush, Alan. There's an eryngium, I think it's Bracteatum, and it's var something other beginning with a P, and it's like a tiny little red flowered eryngium. Now, I had it years ago from Liz Strangman, possibly, and I might have had it again from Beth Chatto. But I've lost it. And then there's a Dutch chap who me and Alan know, and he posted a picture of it this week growing in some perennial gardens, and it's beautiful because it's like a sanguisorm with little red pencils, and it's doing very well. So I think that perhaps the original isn't wonderful, not terribly hardy, but there's a variant of it which obviously suits gardens better. So I'm going to have a look and see if I can get that. So it's an Eryngium bracteatum, and it's I say a variety of it, and it's got it. I suppose it's going to flower to about 5 feet, 4 to 5 feet, with little red pencils. It's a super little thing. So I would like to get that. Very, very fine foliage, grass-like foliage.
I need more Eryngiums in my life. I have a lovely one that I got from you, Alan. Can't remember the name of it, but it's a really strong blue one and it's a good size. But everywhere I go...
the belly eye.
Oh, there we go.
I think it's called the belly eye.
That sounds about right.
Oh, Zabellia is very nice.
One of my favourites is one of Graham's least favourites because he planted it in the desert and it seeds itself everywhere. And it's the variety of Eryngium pandanifolium, which comes from South America. And it's called the Chelsea Physic Garden strain because this one has maroon thimbles on it as opposed to grey thimbles on it. But it's a monstrous thing. It grows 9 to 12 feet tall, which is quite large.
Have you got any spare ones?
I might have.
Because I had it and it was beautiful. Fantastic thing. I used to cut the flowers and dry them. It's beautiful. And then I tried to move it, which was a mistake.
Well, we potted some on the other day, Ben.
Well, I was going to get some tomorrow from Avondale, but they've sold out.
Well, if you want me to
cheap this year, Alan.
One, I will do.
Alan, they were very cheap this year.
I know. Would you know that? I mean, we go back a long way. Now
They were almost giving them away. They were.
So, Alan Gray, what's your FLOMO?
My has to be FLOMOs because there's a piece of garden. I have to say I'm working it out in my head still at the moment, but it happened because we had to divert a path because of social distancing when the garden is open. And instead of it being a kind of back way to nowhere, it suddenly became a main highway to somewhere. And so I was going along this path and I was putting out hogweed and cow parsley and, you know, all the things that you kind of see on the outer edges of a garden, lots of old wild campion. They're all nice things in a wildflower way, but it now has to be slightly more manicured. And I was sort of thinking, I moved some cyclamen hederifolium, silver leaf, and I put those there. And I suddenly thought this piece of garden needs loving. It needs tending. It's a lot more open than it used to be because we removed some lime trees. So it's got a nice open feel to it. And I would like to plant amongst lots of other lovely, especially early flowering bulbs, corms, tubers, that sort of thing. I would like to plant some trilliums. Now, trilliums is something that I haven't really had a great deal of success with, mainly because I haven't bought any, because they are quite expensive to buy.
Oh, please.
What?
Frugal Grey? That's
yes,
over here,
Frugal
is it?
Grey.
You're getting that
That's
from...
unheard of, I know.
No. What's he called? Who's the king of thrift?
Oh, Martin. Martin Davies.
Martin's been rubbing off on Alan, something I never thought I'd say that.
Be a guest at some point, but yeah, the king of thrift. I think Alan Gray, you've spent a bit of time with him. You've picked up some of his frugal ways.
No, I haven't at all, because some of these trilliums can be 10 or 20 pounds each. And that is for a single plant, because when they're propagated, they're grown from seed, and it probably takes 8 to 10 years to get a flowering size plant. And if you speak to somebody like Rob Potterton, no relation to Ben, but Rob Potterton of Potterton's Nursery up in Lincolnshire, he will tell you that that's how long it takes. And to be quite honest, you've got to be prepared to pay for that. You know, there are various other sort of plants that you can get, like erythroniums. And if you buy the one called pagoda with the little upturned Chinese hat yellow flowers, that will multiply like billio. But lots of the trilliums, they come from American woodland mainly. It's very choice plants. Thunder, you must remember when we went to that lovely garden owned by Jane Ann Walton in the Swantonovas one day, and we actually saw this lovely mauvey pink and green. Do you remember that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It's absolutely, and they're thrilling things to have. And it's another dimension, and it's another piece of garden. And that's where lots of the snowdrops are going to go that I brought home today as well.
Oh, how exciting. So you're having some FLOMO about trilliums. So your FLOMO
Trilliums,
for all trilliums?
Yes, for all trilliums, but I would particularly like the larger flowered varieties. I'm not, where's this going to go with Ben? I don't know, but I'm not one for little things. I don't do the little delicate, dear little tweaky.
Where are these going? The back track to nowhere? Where? Tell me.
I like
where are you sticking them again? No.
Size does matter.
Anyway. The common and cheaper ones are very often very, very garden worthy. People get a bit sniffy about the common ones, but the common ones, the reason they're common and you see them often is because they're easier to grow. And people are very, very excited about these very small ones that that are very difficult, but actually we want something that's going to pop in our garden and produce a lot of growth and flower and look stunning. And I think, you know, a lot of people should sort of consider some of the commoner ones first. And again, if they're well mulched, I mean, I found that for years they were very small, but if I mulched them with something to hold a bit of moisture around the crowns, then suddenly they increase beautifully.
Yeah, well, they're woodlanders, aren't they? So they want an open woodland leafy soil. So if you can provide them with that, they should be fine. But it's strange what you just said, Ben, that what we want as a good garden plant is one that expands and opens up and smiles and enjoys itself in your garden, and one that you can, if you want to, divide it and make more. But there is something to be said for some of the people that grow these finicky little things, because they're all part of a big gene pool. Don't you agree?
Oh, I like it. I mean, I like a delicate one, but obviously I would have that in a pot or a tub, or I mean, some of my little orchids, they would die immediately in the garden, and they have their place, and therefore I think they're justifiably expensive because they are more difficult to grow, and therefore deposit them. So I think like when you and me have been to see snowdrop people, and they have lots in the garden, and they have a little attractive greenhouse with the special ones in there, and I think that's a similar thing. But I think for many people who are put off by trilliums, I think the commoner ones are often the cheaper ones, and actually the ones that bulk up quite nicely. And if they learn from them, you can either grow them from seed, or then perhaps invest in some of the more choice ones.
Yes, exactly.
I feel like I want to know more about your special orchids, Ben.
Well, I would normally be very good, but it hasn't been a special orchid year this year. I've looked at other people's. I don't think I've cosseted them as much as I would have. So I would normally grow lots of, in fact, you both have seen them, lots of epipactis orchids, which look beautiful. And this year, I think it's been too hot very early on, and they were drier than I should have kept them. So I've got lots of growth, but I haven't got a lot of flower. But I've been looking at people who've been looking at them in the wild across Europe this year, and there's some super ones. So the wild ones tend to struggle, but this year the wild ones have done very well, but my pot ones haven't. But yeah, some of these things we grow because we enjoy, but they're not, say that I'm forgetting I'm in East Anglia in one of the driest places in the country, and I want to grow things that are ideally in Scotland or Wales. You know, it's having the time to try and water those things. Equally, I was going to be sat outside, but it's a bit windy today, and a lot of my pots are really dry today. And we've had some torrential rain the last couple of days, but you know, some of these rare things are growing in pots, but they need a lot more care and attention than people probably realise.
Yeah, and watering pots is always a bit of a nightmare. And it's amazing how the wind desiccates everything. Now, we have no time for questions on the last episode of this podcast, and so we've built up quite a few. So we're now going to have a good selection of the questions you've sent in. If you do have a question for Alan and whoever our guest expert is this week, Ben Potterton, you can pop it in the comments section below the video. So Scott has a lovely rhododendron in his garden and would love to know how to make more. So when and how do you take cuttings, Alan?
Well, first of all, let me just say that taking rhododendron cuttings is difficult. And you really do need a propagator to do it if you're going to try at all. But be prepared to have a 50% success rate, that's all. But you just take a cutting like you take a normal cutting from a shrub, a semi-ripe even shoot, and take the lower leaves off. And when you get to the leaf node at the bottom, cut it underneath a leaf node and turn the cutting around in your hand and just slightly wound the other side. Scratch a little piece of bark off or skin off the stem, because that will induce it to callus, which it calluses before rooting. So that's what you do, but don't expect to have huge amounts of success with it, because rhododendrons, when they're propagated, they're normally either grown from seed, which is not reliable because every seedling is genetically different from the other, or they're grafted, and that's the way commercial growers grow them. They actually graft them, and they graft them onto the wild root stock, which is probably Rhododendron ponticum, which is the horrible thing because it's taken over massive areas of our country. It's one of those plants that's introduced and became a pest because it marches forward and doesn't know when to stop. But that's what they do. And I've got a rhododendron, actually, I think it's called Polar or Polar Star or something. It's just finished blooming now. It's a very late one, and that is grafted onto the base stock of Rhododendron ponticum, and you can tell the one from the other because the ponticum stock, when it produces shoots at ground level, they're much smaller leaves than the plant that I want, and I have to keep going back to it 2 or 3 times a year and cutting all those shoots off, the wild shoots off so that the other one gets the maximum amount of strength. But it's difficult. Rhododendrons are difficult. But if Scott, if you have success, I'll bag one off you.
What about layering, Alan? Would you consider layering it?
Yes, you can. You can consider layering it if your bush is long enough. If your bush is big enough, you can actually take a branch down to ground level. And what I would do, I would actually make a slit in one side of that branch and then keep the slit open by placing something like a little wedge in between. Stop grinning, Ben.
I was looking
Like
at Thordis.
I would also wrap that shoot in something like sphagnum moss, and then I would bury it in the ground. And if you bury it in the ground and keep it moist, you're going to. This is a long-term thing. It's a minimum of a year, probably 2, before you can dig that plant up and snap the branch away from the mother and start it off on its own.
Wow, magic. Now, Rugby got in touch about a Tamarix tree. So in spring, they used to this particular tree always used to flower. But for the last 2 years, hasn't been so successful and hasn't turned pink now. Perhaps coincidentally, Rugby cut the tree back quite hard 2 years ago. So they're wondering, is that what's caused it? They have let it get quite big. They'd be grateful for any tips to do better with their tree.
Well, I think, spring flowering Tamarix, especially along the coast, are very, very easy trees to grow because they tolerate salt spray from the sea. But they're very nice because there's 2 sorts of Tamarix you can get: the spring flowering and the autumn flowering, late summer, autumn flowering ones. And they are lovely, lovely sort of pink flowers along this sort of, it's an ugly tree really. It doesn't have sort of leaves as such. It looks like an upturned witch's broom really. But it's a very nice plant nonetheless. Now, I think that probably, Rugby, your Tamarix is suffering from an overkeen haircut. I would give it another year to see what it does. And if it doesn't, I would try taking cuttings. Hey, why the heck don't you try taking cuttings now anyway? Because cuttings are fairly easy to root. Just take cuttings off the plant about 8 inches long, and make a slit in the garden somewhere, fill it full of sand and place your cuttings in the sand. Make sure they're firmly rooted, firmly firmed into the soil on either side. Give it a jolly good watering, and hey, who knows, in a year you might have a young one to take over the duties of the old one that stopped flowering.
For some reason, Ben, you strike me as someone who'd really like Tamarix. They just have some sort of airiness that I can see in your garden. But from that facial expression, I'd guess I'm wrong.
No, they're okay. They're one of those things where I like with the coast. I like with the South Wold. They're nice and scruffy, and they look as if they need to be at the coast. They sort of suit that wind-blown sort of condition. But I don't think that always jumps very well into a garden. I think sometimes they look a bit too scruffy and not entirely sure how people place them. But I do like them. I think South Wold, they're fantastic. I like seeing the birds feeding in them and around them, and it's a good place to look for migrants. But yeah, I do like it, but I think it doesn't always jump into a garden very well.
You know, I absolutely concur with that, Ben, because you've actually hit the nail on the head, because they look perfectly well at the seaside where everything is slightly blown about and, shall we say, less formal. If you try to plant a Tamarix in a formal setting of a formal garden, it looks like a fish out of water.
See, maybe that's why I thought Ben would be a fan. It's a plant with a tousled look about it.
How rude. How rude.
Now, I think you'll both enjoy the next question. Christina is getting a tiny, tiny baby tortoise and wants to plant a little garden for it. So what would you suggest? Now, Ben, as our guest and as our wildlife expert, I suppose I should let you go first, though I know, Alan, you are a super, super keen tortoise keeper. So you're both going to have to kind of vie to give suggestions, I reckon.
I've been first, so let Ben go first this time. So
well, yeah, I'm not a tortoise keeper anymore. We've honed ours because we had quite a lot and they were growing very quickly. But the problem with the tiny, tiny baby tortoises is they stay tiny, tiny for quite a while. And I'd be always nervous about little ones in the garden, because little baby tortoises can be eaten by many things like foxes and crows and seagulls and just swallowed. So I'd always be very careful, because people want to give them out in sunshine and put them outside, but be very careful with them because they are easily picked up by other things. But no, I mean, tortoises if you think where they come from in the wild, most of them are coming from quite rough conditions. So when you buy one as a pet, or we're given one, or rehome one, we often do the best for them, and we give them lots of lush leaves, which they enjoy. They love a lettuce, they love a tomato, but equally they're quite resilient little creatures. In the wild, they're eating quite rough desert type species, and they're surviving on quite dry dry stuff. The main thing about a tortoise is making sure that you've got a lot of vitamins and minerals for it. So if you're going to give it a softer foliage, make sure you sort of use a vitamin supplement. But I mean, they're quite resilient. Tortoises, if you give them a wide range of things to eat, they soon pick what they want. But I like a nice, more of a herby mix, I suppose, which is more similar to as they would get it in the wild. What
about you, Mr. Gray? What do your tortoises like to munch into?
Well, they love mallow, to be quite honest, the little wild mallow. They love that. They love honeysuckle leaves as well. But I think if I was advising somebody, I would get a wildflower mixture and sow that on a little piece of garden. And what I would always do with the tortoises is have a covered run. Ben touched on that because he was talking about small tortoises, but I'm just talking about tortoises per se, because tortoises are very stealable. And I'm not suggesting that people go around stealing tortoises, but they are quite a lot of money to buy. And so it does induce people to do naughty things sometimes. So I'd make sure that they have a very secure run that's covered over at the top and preferably hammered into the ground so they can't be lifted away and lifted off and just taken away. But if you had that and you had a suitable area where you could actually plant with wildflowers, you could move the run at different periods so that so that the chewed up flowers have a chance to recover while you put it onto something new. I think that's what I would do primarily. And they also love apples, of course, as well. Remembering they can dig, because very often that's an important point. And they've dug out. Tortoises are very good diggers.
Right, well, you mentioned apples and pears. The final question is from Francis, who says, my partner would like a cordon or a espalier pear for his birthday to grow on a west-facing fence. Can you recommend a particularly good eating variety? And as we are first-time fruit tree growers, would you recommend cordon or espalier?
For a pear, I would always go for an espalier, I think, because personally I find that they look prettier. Who's this from?
This is for Francis.
Francis. Well, Francis, I hope you still love the old man, because you're going to have to put your hand in your pocket for this one, because if you buy a semi-formed espalier fruit tree, they are expensive, but they're worth it. And then you just learn. I mean, there's so many tutorials online today about telling you how to prune and when to prune and what to prune and all the rest of it when you're making or indeed continuing to form an espalier. It makes it really easy. So don't be frightened of the fact that you're going to have to learn how to tie it in and prune it. But the variety I would recommend is always Doyen de Comis, which is a wonderful old pear, and it does the very, very best of all on a south or west facing fence or wall. And it's the kind of pear you pick and you put it in a drawer, wrap it in tissue paper, put it in a drawer, and you take it out once a week to look at it, and you'll smell. If you lift it up to your nose and you take a sniff, you will smell when it's ready. Leave it too long and it'll go a little bit fosy, as my grandmother used to say, fosy in the middle, which means that where the core is, it starts to go wet and a bit pappy and a bit brown. But eaten at the right time, they are absolutely sublime.
Frances mentioned she was in our native Norfolk. So, Ben, are there any good local suppliers she should be heading to?
I'm disappointed you've not asked me to make a comment. I like a pretty pear. I'm not sure about an old foisty pear, but a pretty pear, I don't mind what lane. I'm quite easily pleased.
You just like a lovely pear.
I like a pear. You know, a nice time of year, a nice pretty pear always cheers me up. And there is some good suppliers, and the Apples and Orchard Project is a very good one. So look, if you type in either heritage Norfolk and Suffolk apple varieties, and you can, you've got local growers and some super things. And when you start looking at it, it is fascinating the range of local fruit that we had and thankfully have still got available to us. So there's some nice pears, there's some nice apples and nice plums, etc. What about robin? We still always have a little robin pears, Alan.
Yes, I've got robin pears as columnar trees. They haven't fruited yet because we've only had them a couple of years, and Ian got them for me in actual fact. But they are lovely if you're short of space. But the beauty about a robin pear is you pick it straight from the tree and pop it in your mouth, just like you would, Ben. It's absolutely delicious.
I knew a robin with a nice pear. Once.
Oh dear. Yes.
I'm sure you did as well, Alan. Actually.
Because as we're on the subject of pears, Ian mentioned to me the other day about Asian pears. Now, I don't know whether anybody's grown Asian pears, and some people might find them a bit strange because although they look like a pear, they eat rather more like an apple. because the skin of a pear, we tend to think of it as being soft and luscious and yielding. Wait for it. No? Oh.
No. I was considering making a comment regarding Ian, but I chose not to.
Oh, I see.
Are they
but the
stripy?
Asian pears are crisp and they're very juicy. So when you bite into them, be prepared to get a wet chin because they dribble down your chin.
I know. I don't know. I haven't seen Ian for a long time. I know he's tried a lot of Norfolk pears, and I think he is trying Asian pears now. But aren't they stripy? Some of them.
Some of them are, yes, but some of them look just like an ordinary English pear or a French pear, but they're not. They are Japanese and they have a different texture.
Very nice.
Well, we're going to run out of time again. So if you want to ask a question on the next podcast, please do comment below, email hello@getgardeningnow.com, and Alan and whoever our next mystery guest is on the podcast can answer your questions. But for the time being, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and thank you, Ben, for finding a very stylish and well-pictured corner of your home to join us.
I'm now thinking I shouldn't have gone with such a fussy wall. That painting there, where it is, needs to go. I should remove that one, but there we go. I was worried there'd be a cobweb behind it, so I didn't take it off.
Well, there's always next time, Ben.
There is.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Putting you in the waiting room, Ben. Bear with me.
Oh. How does one do it?
Can you hear that noise? That's my dog.
But it's big. It gets so big. I mean, it gets so big, doesn't it? Is yours a big one?
What?
Is yours a big one?
Yes, it is.
I thought it would be.
You know that already because
I know. I've seen a picture.
The eryngium you're talking about.
Then, didn't we?
I knew it would descend into chaos. How unsurprising.
Well.